You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
Hey guys, just a quick note. Oh, by the way, don't mind how I look. I know it's been a while since I shaved, but anyways, I wanted to interject for just a moment before the video starts, and just to let you know that, for context, I made the entire video script before I even saw Zaahen's numbers. I just saw his abilities and got like a visual of what they did. So throughout the video, you're going to see a couple things that I am like basically completely wrong about. For example, I mentioned how I thought his ultimate is going to do max health damage and that his E won't do that much damage. Obviously, now that the numbers are out, we can see that his E is the one that does max health damage and stuff. A couple things are going to seem outdated because of the way I recorded the video basically right as I saw Zaahen's numbers. I just want to let you know about that. Focus more on the, I guess, gameplay / experience part of Zaahen, as far as like how I talk about him. And yeah, just again, his first impressions. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about is mostly theoretical, and until we get the actual evidence and empirical data to either prove or disprove what my concerns are going to be about the champion, by the time you see this, he's already out, and people are getting an idea of how he feels to play and stuff like that. And spoiler alert, he's pretty strong right now. I've had the experience of playing him a little bit in solo queue. But anyways, just without any more rambling, enjoy the rest of the video. But again, if you're wondering why am I making all these random assumptions about the champion, is because again, contextually speaking, I didn't know any of the numbers when he came out. I could have waited until after he came out on the PBE and we got to actually see his numbers in action. But I like to give my editors enough time to edit the video. I don't want to make them have to do it in like 3 days, right? But yeah, I hope you can enjoy the video nonetheless. I think it was a pretty good video. I enjoy it, and I do like the champion a lot. Anyways, that's gonna be it. So I will see you guys. I don't know when you'll see me again on camera, but anyways, take care and enjoy the video. I don't know about you, but the Darkin race might be my favorite line of champions in League. Probably because the first ever champion I played was Aatrox back in 2014, but the background and the theme of the faction is just super cool. The idea of relentless battle, non-stop fighting, and healing off damage dealt really speaks to me. Also not to mention that Darkins are all based on a different weapon type: sword, bow, scythe, dagger, spear, what have you. Speaking of spear, the next Darkin champion is finally coming out, Zaahen, who basically took over Xinjiao and is to him what Rost is to Kayn, only in this case there's no transformation, you start out as Zaahen. Now mind you, I'm writing this video on November 9, literally the day he was revealed, and at the time of making this, I'm not sure if Riot plans to keep the two champions separate or pull a gangplank on us and remove him from the game since canonically speaking he's dead. I'm guessing no, because not only would that piss off a lot of people who make Xinjiao, but they literally went through the trouble of updating his visuals. Either way, seeing as how they're both spear users, I'm excited to see how Zaahen's gonna turn out to be, or rather, we'll see how overloaded the guy's gonna turn out. So in today's episode of 200 Years So Well Designed, we're gonna be talking about our newest Darkin. Right away, I'm gonna come out with probably a controversial take. I don't like how he looks. I always admired the whole monster motif they had going with Aatrox, Rost, and Naviri, so the fact that Zaahen's just a buff chiseled dude like the other 50 buff chiseled dudes we have makes me feel mildly disappointed. I'm not saying you can't make a Darkin handsome, but I have expected him to look a lot more vicious looking, you know? I'm a fan of the weapon though, but either way we're here to talk about the game. Nikki Boy or someone else will handle the visual design aspect. To recap on what the Darkin race is all about, in simple terms there are 2 or 3 dominant qualities that are shared amongst most if not all of them. The OG Darkins anyway. Vars was a retcon, so I'm mostly looking at Aatrox, Naviri, and Rost. First and foremost, relentless attack. Darkins by nature are characterized by their incessant bloodlust and constant thirst for battle. Aatrox's entire identity is that he really wants to kill himself, but can't kill himself, so he wants to kill the entire universe in the hopes that wiping out reality can actually kill himself. Yes, that's actually his lore. In any case, the primary characteristic of the Darkin race is their ability for constant battle, in-game that translates to constant uptime and high DPS. They can fight for long stretches and practically never gas out. Whether that comes in the form of low cooldowns or persistent DPS, until their HP hits 0, you have to assume they're always a threat and always active. Second trait is battle healing. Every original Darkin has some way to restore HP off damage dealt, or in many cases they have among the highest combat sustain of any champion in League, further playing into the notion that you can't write them off until they're fully dead. Final trait is tank busting. Darkins are known to be quite good at shutting down tanks or bulky champions, either by way of possessing extreme amounts of percent health damage in their kit, or their constant healing giving them enough staying power to outlast most tanks. Being a Darkin, Zaahen is expected to share similarities with his comrades. The only question is, what form will that take? Unlike the others, Zaahen canonically took over Xinjiao, a presently existing champion, so we can expect for him to have a few similarities to Xinjiao. Let's find out. Starting with this passive, we have Cultivation of War. Basic attacks and abilities cause him to get bonus attack damage per stack, and at full stacks, he gains extra AD and the ability to revive. If it sounds familiar to you boomers out there, that's because it's nearly identical to old Aatrox's passive, wherein he would generate Bloodwell anytime he paid an HP cost, and at full Bloodwell, he gained bonus AD, attack speed, and a revive passive. On one hand, I'm not a big fan of recycling abilities on other champions, especially when said properties were ultimately taken away from them. Kinda feels like a punch in the face for Riot to take away old Aatrox or even the revive passive on current Aatrox and then blatantly give it to Zaahen. On the other hand, thematically it does make sense to have on a Darkin champion. Again, unlike other races, Darkins are cut from the same cloth, almost to the T, and that whole concept of ramping strength the longer you stay in combat is accurately depicted by Zaahen's passive. Gameplay-wise, I think having backloaded strength is better than immediate value because it makes balancing the champion more straightforward. If they end up being too strong or bursty, or conversely too weak and slow to ramp up, you can adjust by making the stacks accumulate faster or slower or giving more value per stack. But I guarantee you the revive passive is gonna get taken out every single time Riot introduced a revive mechanic. It was instantly taken out of the game. Aatrox lost his revive, Old Chemsoul was taken out, and Voracious Otacon was removed from the game. Having to kill a champion twice over makes the game simply too difficult for the opposing team. Or if they're adamant about keeping it this time, they definitely need to nerf the healing. Old Aatrox could only restore I think like 30% of his max health. In the Skin Spotlight demonstration, Zaahen literally regened up to like 3/4 of his entire health bar. That is overpowered. But again, numbers are subject to change. Q is Darkin Glaive, an auto attack empowerment that makes him attack twice for bonus damage and heal himself, basically like a Fiamani Q. But just like Nafiri's Q Darkin Daggers, Darkin Glaive can be cast twice, with the second cast having a knockup. That's where the similarity between Zaahen and Xinjiao is, as the latter had a knockup at the end of his Q too. From this alone, we know for a fact that Zaahen's gonna be building on it effects, not only because more attack speed will get his passive quicker, but because his Q effectively gives you 4 attacks in quick succession of each other. Even if his Q bonus damage is a max health, it still accomplishes the premise of being a tank buster in that he can easily rush Blade of the Ruined King and Black Cleaver, so we're checking off all the boxes, high sustained damage and battle healing, and then tank busting. Q is a fairly standard ability otherwise. Again, I'm writing this on the day he was announced, so I don't know the specifics yet. I'm going only by first impressions. I hope there's a cooldown or delay in between casts of his Q, and I also hope it's not an auto attack reset. If it does both, then Zaahen can literally auto Q and get 6 attacks off in 1 second. That would be problematic if you factor in Kraken Slayer, Bork and stuff. Or maybe they plan to make it more of a bruiser with Black Cleaver and Sundered Sky. Either way, the Q seems okay. If the cooldown isn't too short, it shouldn't make him invincible. On to his W. Aatrox means I'm sorry, Niall, if you're watching this. My condolences, brother. This has to be the biggest slap in the face to Aatrox I've ever seen. Dreaded Return is a stab in a straight line in front of him that damages enemies and pulls them towards him. Basically a Mordekaiser pull if you want to think of it that way. Yo, Zaahen W would make Aatrox's life so much easier. Aatrox could Q, then EQ, then W to drag them into point blank for him to use Q3. I'm convinced they made Zaahen to poke fun at old Aatrox and new Aatrox at the same time. All tangents aside, as a melee auto attacker, having a way to keep opponents on you is definitely appreciated. From what I can tell, it's a fixed pull distance like Pike's Bone Skewer, meaning if he grabs a target very close to him, they get thrown behind him, leading me to believe if he pulls someone at max range, they don't get yanked all the way, just a small amount. So even though it's an AoE pull with a fair amount of range, it's not a full hook like Blitzcrank. Obviously a utility spell, and it seems to be fairly narrow in width, so I can imagine it being easy to sidestep. Next we have his E, Ariad Rush, a dash forward followed by an AoE slash around him. Basically King Q or Nafiri E. The attack itself looks pretty big, but I don't think it's gonna do a lot of damage. Zaahen's W and E feel like they're primarily just meant for their utility components and not actually DPS. They likely just made them do damage for the purposes of accumulating passive stacks. I get the feeling that Zaahen's an auto attacker, so basically old Aatrox. Now, considering the short distance, if Zaahen misses W, he looks like he's gonna get kited pretty well. I think overall his effective range is not that great, so he might play more like a Juggernaut or a Skirmisher than a Diver. Finally, we arrive at his ultimate, Grim Deliverance. After a brief delay, he jumps into the air and then smashes the ground to deal huge AoE damage and heal for a portion of all damage dealt. From what I can tell, it is a dash tool since in the Skin Spotlight clip it shows Zaahen moving forward when using it, but you can also just use it right on yourself, kind of like Alawi or Nico are. Technically he has 2 dashes, but one of them is a channel and animation, so his mobility isn't too egregious. Either way, big AoE damage and healing. I guarantee you the ultimate will be max health damage. This feels like an ultimate version of Aatrox's old Dark Flight, only instead of a knocked up it's a heal. In any case, it's an ultimate with a Juggernaut raid boss vibe to it, and I can see some outplay potential too. The dash gives both unstoppability and damage mitigation, so you can time your ultimate to avoid critical hard CC or burst damage. They intend for him to be a top laner, so I guess you can use this to deal with like Jack's Counter-Strike or an ultimate, Malphite ultimate and stuff. Pretty handy. Okay, so trait 1, constant DPS. He has a bunch of auto attack empowerments, check. Trait 2, battle healing. His Q and ultimate both heal out damage dealt, check. Trait 3, tank busting. He is guaranteed to have % health damage on at least one of his abilities, assuredly his ultimate and possibly on Q, check. Looks pretty Darkin build to me. Conceptually, I think Zaahen's a combination of old Aatrox and Xinjiao basically, a lot of auto attack damage and dueling potential in his kit. My guess is you're either going to build him like an auto attacker with stuff like Blade of the Ruined King with Zend, maybe Kraken Slayer or Triforce, or they can make him more like a bruiser with Black Cleaver, definitely a Tiamat item whether Stridebreaker, Titanic or Ravenous, and then your usual Sterix Gauge, Death Stance and whatnot. Sunder Sky wouldn't be a bad option either. Essentially a classic fighter top lane. As a top lane myself, I think I'll enjoy playing him, and I think that's what Riot's trying to go for. His kit's intentionally simplified to be easy to pick up. There is a bit of skill expression in the sense that you can do some basic combos like Q knockup to guarantee W, or timing ultimate to deal with a critical enemy attack. But generally speaking, he's in the same vein as other auto attack bruisers like Jax, Wukong Set, what have you. Now then, what are some potential issues that might come from a playstyle like this? The obvious one is the revive passive. Again, there's a reason Riot keeps taking them out of the game. Full revives are inherently unhealthy for League because in most scenarios, fights are won and lost based on quickly neutralizing a member of the enemy team. Making picks or bursting someone down before they get a chance to do anything gives your team incredible momentum in routing out the other 4 members. The few revive passives we do still have in the game like Anivia and Zac leave them totally exposed and unable to do anything, making it easy for the enemy team to kill them again. But for Aatrox and Zaahen, you essentially get a GA, allowing you to fight at full capacity when you respawn. To be fair, you have to have full determination to actually tap into the death passive, and provided they're smart about it, they can make it like a Fury mechanic to where Zaahen stops attacking, he loses determination while out of combat. Even so, I just don't think it's ideal to have. Yes, narratively speaking, if anyone were to have a revive, it should be Darkins. That's kind of their whole motif, being immortal, angry COD lobby edgelords. But it presents a catch-22 situation where if you make a revive passive that only heals you back to, say, 25% HP, you probably will just die again right away, defeating the purpose of the revive. But if you give a champion any more than that, it forces the enemy team to have to kill you basically twice, turning every fight into a 6v5. I also think a lot of Zaahen's balancing will be overly centered around having that revive, whether nerfing the rest of his kit to be more dependent on it, or giving the revive an impractically long cooldown. Something tells me they'll take it out after like a year or two. Old Aatrox was allowed to have a revive because he was a pretty shitty champion, but Zaahen's a modern day champion with 2 crowd controls and 2 dashes. They're not overpowered crowd controls and dashes, but the fact that he does have them gives him a fair degree of agency. Second potential issue I can see him running into is again abusing on-hit builds. I don't have the numbers yet, but having mentioned before, if his Q can be casted immediately one after another, this might be the most overpowered auto attack empowerment in the game. 2 autos that do bonus damage and heal, and an instant recast after with a knockup. Meanwhile, you have Jack's W, which only does bonus damage. I know we have other broken auto attack resets like Set Q or Udyr Q, but both of those champions are relatively slow in movement, and Set can't really afford a very on-hit focused build. However, Zaahen can. In fairness, if they budget his power accordingly to where his W and E damage are both very low, then it becomes a Camille situation where 90% of his DPS will be in Q. In that case, it should be passable, but it depends on what kind of bonus damage we're talking about. If his Q does max health damage on each hit, then that might be a bit excessive. Final one pertains to his passive. Cultivation of War gives bonus AD with every stack, along with an additional boost of AD at full stacks. I'm not entirely sure how much bonus AD we're talking about here, but depending on how much he actually gets, whether just like 1 to 2 bonus AD per stack and in total it's only like 20 or 30, or if it's based on a percentage of his bonus AD, I can easily see Zaahen running into a full tank issue where he can turn into a super drain tanky raid boss by say going Borg in the full tank, and then he'd be unkillable while ripping everyone to pieces. I know Aatrox and Naafiri get bonus AD as well, but in the case of Naafiri, she's a diver. Her pack mates give her 16 DPS, but she's mostly a burst rotation champion, so getting 20% bonus AD on her W is fine. For Aatrox, he gets a huge amount of attack damage from his ultimate to where he can easily break above 5 to 600, but once again, he's an ability caster. More specifically, only one of his abilities actually deals damage, and it's easy to avoid. Zaahen, by contrast, gets all his bonus AD passively, and it doesn't have a set duration behind it. I think it holds out indefinitely until he either dies or leaves combat. Furthermore, he's a basic attacker. Basic attackers can take advantage of high amounts of AD more comfortably since you can compound it by building attack speed and whatnot. In essence, Zaahen's a fair champion gameplay-wise. He doesn't appear to have anything particularly overpowered, and I'd imagine all it takes is a Bramble Vest to cut him down to size, but he could run into stat checking issues, or putting it simply, Zaahen might either be extremely weak on release, or 100% pick ban 55% win rate on release. He's a very easy champion to pick up and play, and I'd imagine most top laners are going to want to try him out, so there's a possibility of him spiraling out of control and being extremely overtuned. Conveniently, that can be addressed by simply touching his numbers, but again, it depends on how accessible his Q is and how high his numbers are. All in all, gameplay-wise, I'm excited for Zaahen. Not a fan of his default appearance, but whatever, I'll just wait for a skin or something. Keep in mind, these are all just my first impressions, they can easily change. But anyway, how do you guys feel about Zaahen? Do you like him, hate him, 200 years, or well designed? Let me know in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you'd like to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other champion first impressions videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.